Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
What if the biggest story isn't who the Blue Jays are signing, but who their division rivals are adding while Toronto continues evaluating options? What if the competitive landscape is shifting so rapidly that standing still equals falling behind? The past 48 hours delivered significant roster moves across Major League Baseball, and while none of them directly involve Toronto, each one impacts how the Blue Jays must approach the remainder of this offseason. The urgency is building and the window for decisive action is narrowing. Munetaka Murakami just signed a 2-year deal worth $34 million with the Chicago White Sox, and that news caught nearly everyone off guard. The White Sox finished with one of the worst records in baseball history last season, making them an unlikely destination for a premium international free agent. But here's what makes this fascinating from a strategic perspective. Chicago offered Murakami exactly what he needed, which is a guaranteed opportunity to prove himself at the major league level without competing for playing time. He gets 2 years to demonstrate his power translates against advanced pitching, and if it does, he'll hit free agency again at age 29 with leverage to command a massive long-term deal. The financial structure tells you everything about how Murakami and his representatives viewed this decision. $34 million over 2 years represents a bet on himself rather than maximizing immediate guaranteed money. He could have stayed in Japan's Nippon Professional Baseball League, continued dominating as he has throughout his career, and signed an extension that would have provided financial security without the risk of failure against major league pitching. Instead, he chose the challenge of proving his elite power production can carry over, despite questions about his ability to handle high-velocity fastballs and whether his strikeout rate will balloon facing better breaking stuff. The White Sox get an intriguing piece to build around as they begin what will be a multi-year reconstruction project. They still have Luis Robert Jr. on the trading block and Kyle Teal as one of their few legitimate prospects. Murakami provides them with a middle-of-the-order bat who could either become a foundational piece if he succeeds or a tradable asset if contending teams need power reinforcement at the deadline. For Chicago, this represents minimal financial risk with potential for significant upside, which is exactly the kind of move rebuilding organizations should make. From Toronto's perspective, Murakami was one of several international options they explored as alternatives to the premium domestic free agents. His signing eliminates him from consideration, but doesn't fundamentally alter the Blue Jays' strategic calculus. They're pursuing bigger fish with Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman, and potentially re-signing Bo Bichette. Murakami would have represented a fallback option if those primary targets fell through, but Toronto's focus remains on landing established major league stars rather than betting on international players with questions about translation. The more significant development affecting Toronto came yesterday when the Boston Red Sox acquired Wilson Contreras from the St. Louis Cardinals. This trade addresses a critical need for Boston behind the plate while providing St. Louis with young pitching in return. Contreras gives the Red Sox a veteran catcher who can handle their developing pitching staff while providing offensive production from a position where quality bats are scarce. His ability to frame pitches and manage a game situation makes Boston's young rotation immediately more effective, which directly impacts Toronto's divisional competition. The American League East keeps getting stronger while the Blue Jays continue their evaluation process, and that competitive pressure should accelerate decision-making in Toronto's front office. Boston just upgraded catching with Contreras. Baltimore has been aggressive throughout the offseason and appears positioned to add premium pitching if someone like Framber Valdez becomes available. Even Tampa Bay, despite their perpetual payroll constraints, always seems to find ways to remain competitive through creative roster construction. The Yankees have been quiet, but will inevitably make moves because that's what the Yankees do when faced with pressure. Toronto finds itself in a situation where standing still equals falling backward relative to division competitors. They've made quality additions with Tyler Rogers strengthening the bullpen and other moves improving roster depth. But the marquee offensive upgrade that transforms them from playoff contender to championship favorite hasn't materialized yet. With 50 days until spring training according to the countdown, the timeline for major free agent signings is compressing. Players want decisions made before the holidays conclude so they can settle into their new cities and prepare for the upcoming season. The names connected to Toronto remain consistent. Kyle Tucker represents the premium offensive talent who addresses multiple needs with his combination of power, on-base ability, speed, and defensive value. Alex Bregman has emerged as a legitimate possibility over the past week, with multiple credible reports suggesting serious interest from the Blue Jays. Re-signing Bo Bichette keeps organizational continuity and maintains the relationship between homegrown stars. Then there are the remaining international options like Kazuma Okamoto, whose posting deadline approaches, and Roki Sasaki, who represents perhaps the most intriguing pitching prospect available. The Blue Jays appear genuinely involved in multiple pursuits rather than just having their name attached for leverage purposes. That's the critical difference between this offseason and previous winters when Toronto was connected to stars who ultimately signed elsewhere. The acquisitions they've already made demonstrate willingness to spend, and the public statements from Mark Shapiro about needing to get better signal organizational commitment to meaningful upgrades. When you combine that with credible insider reports about active negotiations, it suggests something significant will eventually materialize. The psychological impact of winning changes free agent perception of organizations. Players want to join teams positioned to compete for championships, and Toronto's World Series appearance last October proved they belong in that conversation. The roster additions they've made strengthen that perception, creating momentum that makes subsequent recruitment easier. When players see quality veterans choosing Toronto, it validates the organizational direction and makes other free agents more willing to consider the Blue Jays seriously rather than viewing them as a fallback option. The timeline pressure works both ways. Players want decisions made so they can plan their off seasons, but teams also need clarity to finalize their rosters before spring training begins. The longer major free agents remain unsigned, the more likely deals get completed quickly once someone blinks and accepts an offer. That compression of the market could benefit Toronto if they've positioned themselves as the best option for one of these players. Being patient while maintaining active conversations keeps you in position to strike when the moment arrives. The question facing Toronto's front office is whether their evaluation process will conclude in time to secure their preferred targets before other teams swoop in. Free agency isn't a static marketplace where options remain available indefinitely. Every day that passes creates risk that another team makes an offer compelling enough to close a deal, removing that player from consideration. The Blue Jays need to balance thorough evaluation with decisive action, knowing that overthinking can be just as costly as rushing into poor decisions. Here's what feels different about this particular offseason. The urgency from organizational leadership sounds genuine rather than performative. The reported interest in multiple premium players suggests a shotgun approach where Toronto will land someone even if their first choice signs elsewhere. The competitive pressure from division rivals getting better creates external motivation beyond just internal roster construction preferences. All of these factors point toward Toronto making a significant move rather than entering spring training with essentially the same roster that fell short in the World Series. The next 2 weeks will likely determine how the remainder of this offseason unfolds. Major free agents typically make decisions shortly after Christmas as the new year approaches. Teams finalize their payroll commitments and shift focus towards spring training preparation. The Blue Jays have positioned themselves to be players for premium talent. Now they need to convert that positioning into actual acquisitions. The gifts aren't under the tree yet, but the shopping isn't finished, and Toronto still has time to complete the transactions that transform them from contender to favorite. Whether they execute with the decisiveness required remains the compelling question as we count down toward pitchers and catchers reporting in 50 days.